I'm Robin Kesno. I am an RVT. I run Animal RN, and I'm a Christian in business. And I have with me Meg. Meg is a good friend of mine, I would say.
Absolutely.
She is younger than me in age, but probably not when you look at the age of somebody's soul.
I would agree with that.
Wise woman.
Thank you.
Today specifically, talking about just, I had in mind like anxiety and depression,
Sure.
and then for me, the angle always comes up, like for me being a Christian, it's like, we can't talk about these things, and that pisses me off because it's not untrue. The Bible tells us not to worry about stuff and whatever, and it doesn't make us bad people just because of that. So that's kind of what got me on I need to talk to people that have kind of been to the other side of, have I ever tried to commit suicide? Yeah. How did I come out the other side of it, and where am I today, and what does that mean for me going forward? And then other people, like you, like what have your experiences been? So maybe that's a good place to start.
Sure.
Say, what has your experience around, let's say, you choose a launching off point, whatever makes sense to tell the story.
I definitely have attempted suicide, and it put me in the hospital twice. I call it the beginning of rock bottom and the end of rock bottom.
Okay.
My first attempt was when I was in high school, and I was very silent about it. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't even tell the friend who saved me that I was sitting in my room ready to not be here anymore. And he called me and said, "What's going on? You seemed off today." And we just talked. "Oh, I haven't been feeling good," and we just talked. And I went to school the next day like nothing had happened. And then finally, when I was in college, I hit a point where I hadn't showered in months. I hadn't eaten in about a week and a half. Anything substantial anyway.
Right.
And I went to my mom and said, "I need help." She goes, "Okay." She brought me to the hospital because she had called all of her friends that she knew at the hospital and said, "This is a situation I'm in. What do I do?" And every one of them said, "Bring her to the ER."
Okay.
And so we went to the ER. I had a serious addiction to self-harm at the time.
How did that show up for you? What did that look like?
I cut myself.
Okay.
And in various places, a lot of people never knew because of the way that I had figured out how to hide it. I was truly addicted to it. And so my mom brings me to the hospital. I show the nurse everything. And she's like, "Okay, we're going to get you admitted as soon as we have a bed." And they brought me up to the psych ward, had me admitted. And then that night, actually, they had transferred me from the inner city hospital to a more suburban hospital that was more built to handle suicide and depression and anxiety and those kinds of cases versus schizophrenia and those kinds of cases. It was, and so brought me over there. We did group therapy and one-on-one therapy and kind of crafts and hobbies and things like that to kind of get away from, allow yourself to feel the things that you're feeling, but put it in a more productive for sort of.
Okay. So to shift it from self-harm to something else being the outcome of the emotions physically showing up. Okay.
So I was there I did inpatient for 2 weeks, and then I was outpatient for almost 3. And the outpatient, they called it a partial hospitalization program. I got to do all of the same things that I was doing in inpatient, but I got to go sleep in my own bed at night.
Okay.
Which was nice. And then, so that was November. And then I was doing pretty well. I was doing okay. At least I got really good at pretending I was okay. And then
was pretending for you, for other people, or both?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
I wanted to believe that it had worked. Okay. That was going to be the end of it, that I was going to be okay. And then in the beginning of June, the following June, I was feeling incredibly suicidal again. And I had set myself up that this was going to be it. Once again, I was very quiet about it. I didn't want anybody to stop me. And I looked at my dog, honestly, and I was like, who's going to take care of you when I'm gone? And that's when I went to my mom again, and I said, I'm not okay. She goes, okay. So the second time she brought me straight to the, like, more suburban hospital. We went to their ER. It's all in the same, like, hospital umbrella. So,
right. But she knew step 2, so she just bypassed the... Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so for me, that was the end of rock bottom, because I had... The first time, I listened to what they said, and I did what they said, because I felt as if I was going through the motions. And then the second time, I let it really sink in and be a part of my care plan. To, get a really good therapist and actually stay on the medicine, let it do what it's gonna do for me. Okay. And I have very happily not been suicidal since. And I haven't hurt myself in over 2.5 years.
Very cool. Okay. Without digging deeper yet, the first time that you got help, you said that you felt like you went through the motions, right? Yeah. So was there anything that changed for you to take it to, okay, this is going to be lifestyle for me, as far as, like, really embedding it into your world so that it can do the work?
I think it was the realization that I wasn't feeling suicidal because I wanted to die, but more because I didn't like the way I was living.
Ooh. Wow.
And so, and then that realization is what really set me into, Mom, I need help. I need to let them help me again, to really take it in and do the things that they're suggesting, and taking care of how I eat and finding something that makes me happy, and let that be the lifestyle that I live.
Okay.
And
What is the difference today? So it's been 2.5 years since you've self-harmed. You're not
even longer than that since I've attempted.
How do you know it won't happen again? Or what would you do if it were to happen again?
The feeling has actually come up.
Okay.
Recently. And it was taking control of my own thought process. Okay. And understanding that these are not my thoughts, but thoughts that are controlled by the chemicals in my brain. And being able to separate what I want in my life and how my brain chemistry is affecting my life. And it's kind of a step back and look at yourself in the mirror, do it, and more like, that's not really what I want. That's not really what I need to feel better.
Right.
It's the knowing, yes, I know what it made me feel like before, but then it made you feel like crap because you're looking at yourself and there's scars and there's, there's all this awful consequences that went with the momentary lapse in how bad I was feeling.
Right.
And so I skip the destructive decision and move towards something that I know is going to create a similar release of endorphins without the negative consequences. Coloring, listening to music, taking the dog to the dog park, just changing the way that I focus on how I live.
Those are things that we all know coloring releases stress.
Yeah.
Even if you're not an artistic person. We all know that hanging out with an animal makes us calm down. It has a physiological response on our heart rate lowering and our blood pressure lowering. And yet those are exactly the kinds of things that when you're stressed and when you're busy that you don't do. And that you're not going to do.
Right.
And so if you combine stress and busyness and a chaotic life, for some people it's kids, for other people it's work or school, whatever it is, combine that with the brain chemistry and combine that with the I don't have time. How do you keep it from just being something that you're not going to do?
I have kind of taken on, I don't remember where I saw it, but I've kind of taken on this 2-minute rule.
Okay.
If I can do something in 2 minutes, don't push it away, just do it. So whether it's putting clean dishes away, or reading a paragraph, or turning on some music. If I can do it, if I can accomplish it in 2 minutes or less, just do it. And so that's really helped me And then you'd be amazed at how many 2 minutes you have in a day and how much you really can accomplish. And so if I'm on a break at work and I'm really stressed, I have 2 minutes to color a petal on my coloring book.
Yeah.
I have 2 minutes to read something new on Wikipedia or whatever. Always striving for new knowledge and enriching and engaging myself.
Where did you get these tools? Like, so knowing that, you've spent time with therapists, knowing that you had that inpatient, outpatient experience, is that where you've gained the tools, or how did you get all these different, because you have a lot of tools already. You've just mentioned a few, and we haven't even said, what are all of your tools?
Right.
So how did you get those?
A lot of the crafty kind of tools I got in my inpatient, outpatient experience. Okay. We actually spent an hour each day doing crafts, whatever you wanted, coloring, wood crafts, ceramics. They had lots of cool stuff to play with.
Nice.
So,
okay. So even the not into crayons person was going to find something they could dig into.
They had little birdhouses you could paint and lots of really cool things. And so a lot of the crafty type tools came from there. And then I've utilized the internet. The internet gives people a really easy sense of anonymity. So they're more willing to talk about these things that are hard to talk about.
Okay.
And that's kind of where I've gathered the advice, the 2-minute piece. Probably on Tumblr, honestly. People are really willing to offer, hey, this is what works for me. If it works for you, great. So I've kind of just collected these tools like a little tool hoarder.
Perfect.
One of the other things that I've found was there's never a stupid reason not to kill yourself. Maybe your school sells cookies on Thursdays and it's Tuesday. Maybe you're alone for a weekend and nobody's going to be home to feed the cat until Monday.
Okay.
There's never a stupid reason to stay here. It actually pulled me out of that feeling that, okay, maybe there's something more that I need to be here for. I'm not done yet.
Okay.
Even now, when I feel awful, when I feel crappier than crap, I just remember I need to take care of my dog, or I need to finish that book that I was reading, or whatever.
Yeah. I'm curious to see, so one of the things that made the difference from the end of your rock bottom to the beginning of your rock bottom was being able, and forgive me, I'm going to use my own words, to basically differentiate you, Meg, from, I'm going to say the voice in your head. I don't mean voice in your head, but from your thoughts. So that you, Meg, are different than the thought process, than the content of the thought.
I am not my depression.
So where did you get that kind of information? Because there's a lot of, Eckhart Tolle talks about being present and separating from the ego. But what's what gave it to you?
It actually came from a book by John Green. It's called Paper Towns.
Okay.
At the very first scene in this book, it's kind of like a prologue type scene. These two kids find this man who had killed himself in the park. The main female character of the book, her name is Margot Roth Spiegelman, and she had made this comment about how all of the strings on the inside were cut, and that people are puppets to their own minds, and all of his strings were cut.
Okay.
And so I kind of developed that idea of being a puppet to your own mind to, I am the puppet master. The string that is attached to my depression is mine to control. It doesn't have to control me.
What, if any, fail-safes do you have in place now? So, if your chemistry won, if you didn't catch it and you didn't bust out your tools, if something were to happen where you're chemically, your body took over on a physiological level that you couldn't catch in time, what fail-safes do you have in place, if any?
So I talk to my best friend every night. We talk for at least 20 minutes. And she knows that if I don't call her, something's up.
Okay.
And even if it's a, hey, how was your day? was great. I have to go to bed now. Kind of conversation we talk. And I have a lot of people in my life who have come to understand the difference in how I talk between, like, from Meg to depressed Meg. And the words that I choose to use are slightly different.
Okay.
And the people who are closest to me, my mom, my best friend Megan, can pick up on that. And, hey, are you okay? And sometimes just hearing, are you okay, is enough to trigger the, no, I'm not.
Has it ever caught you where you didn't even realize you weren't okay until one of them?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've personally done that. We run around and so many, like, we don't check in with ourselves.
Yeah.
Just in general, just the, hey, how are you? And we do the fine.
Right.
No, I want the real answer.
Yeah.
And half the time we don't know the real answer. And
right.
so doing this kind of work, we become better at checking in with ourselves more often, but we could all get caught off guard. Yeah. So I know for me, I have been caught off guard where I'm like, I'm not good. I am whatever I am at the time. Right. Sometimes it's just angry and didn't realize I was angry, and it helped me to let go and forgive and get over something. Yeah. But I can't believe sometimes how many times it's caught me off guard that my surprise to my own answer to this question. So that's very cool that you those people.
And one of the other things that is really changed for me from, the end of rock bottom to now and how far I've come up is that somewhere along the line, I couldn't tell you exactly when, but somewhere along the line, I gave myself permission to feel things. I don't suppress as much as I used to. And it's just that even if I'm sitting in my room alone and I'm angry about something, I'll write it down in a journal. Or if I'm feeling sad about something, and I'll call somebody, hey, I'm not doing so hot right now. Can I just fill up your voicemail box for a minute or whatever? Mm-hmm. And it's just allowing myself to acknowledge my feelings, acknowledge that they're there, and allowing myself to feel them.
So that's actually a huge thing, I think, because I know culturally some people think this, some people try and do this, where it's the answer to not becoming depressed or not letting anxiety kind of spiral into that is that don't feel this, don't be sad, don't be angry, don't be lonely, don't. And you're finding the opposite is true, allowing it to just ride the wave, just whatever it is, we're just surfing here.
And as a pop culture reference, I think Frozen was an incredible example of why that's not a good theory to have.
Yes.
Just saying.
Yeah, good point. Very good point. Some people are ashamed about this stuff. Some people don't feel like they have anybody to talk to.
Absolutely.
Is that true?
For a while, I believed that I didn't have anybody to talk to, but you'd be surprised at how many people in your circle are willing to talk about it because they're going through the same things and don't want to talk about it either.
Yeah.
Once you just kind of like put the feelers out there. For example, when I had gotten a tattoo as a present to myself.
Let's see it.
It is here on my arm. It says warrior. Right. The I is a semicolon. And once I put this picture on Facebook and told everybody my story, and that it was a present to myself for being 2 years not harming myself, and even longer since the last time I committed or attempted to commit suicide. And there were people in my life, teachers that I had in high school, who had told me, I was suicidal when I was that age, and I'm here for you. And it's one thing to hear I'm here for you, and another thing for somebody to be there when you need them. And that you'd be surprised once you kind of put the feelers out there that people really care and want to help you be the best you.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things that dramatically changed the way that I view how my depression affects somebody else was the day that my childhood dog had passed away.
Okay.
And we had decided we were going to bury him in our backyard. And not that he knew I could hear him, but hearing my dad crying over our dog. Don't get me wrong. I was devastated that he was gone.
Yes.
But just realizing how emotional my dad was over the dog kind of put it into perspective for me, who's always been daddy's little girl. Like, how would he be reacting if that was me instead of the dog? And it really changed the way that I see myself as not just living in my world, but as a piece in somebody else's.
True.
And just recognizing that, yes, I am the center of my world. I take care of myself, but I'm also a part of somebody else's, and I need to recognize that too.
Yeah. Now, okay, so if somebody is not suicidal, they've never been suicidal. I know that there are people who commit suicide and or attempt suicide that have not had suicidal thoughts before, and it just like hits them. But let's just take the suicide piece of it off the table completely, because
sure.
People throw around words anxiety, they throw around the word depression. Right. Like in everyday life, I'm always very careful with when, how, and the context of using the term depression, because I have not been declared clinically depressed. It's not a medical term for me. It's me describing a level of despair and desperation and feeling that I know people will understand that I mean business.
Right.
It gives it a gravity. So even if somebody's not depressed, but they're on that like anxiety bubble and they're like maybe tempted to say depressed, but they won't because they know they're not all the way there. Is that a dangerous place to be, and to not do some of these tools to pull yourself out of it? Or is it completely unrelated in your opinion?
One of the things that I learned from my current therapist, who's fabulous, was we actually spent the first 2 or 3 sessions and I never said a word to him about myself.
Okay.
He taught me about, there's 2 different kinds of depression. And there's situational and there's clinical. Situational is exactly what it sounds like. My grandmother died and I am depressed about it. It's usually you can identify very, very easily what,
like a trigger,
for lack of a better word, what triggered your sadness and your grief or whatever. And it'll usually, if you allow yourself to feel the feelings and let it cycle through your body, and it'll, not that grieving for your grandmother would ever really go away, but you'll feel better within a couple of days or even a couple of weeks, or you can move on. Clinical depression kind of comes up out of nowhere. You can't, I lost my favorite book. Like, okay, but should you be crying for 3 hours about that? Like, there's that, the trigger that's being explained doesn't really match the response. And and the other thing is that you're feeling these symptoms for at least 2 weeks. And that's the things that clinicians will look at, therapists, psychiatrists. That's the things that they'll look at as far as differentiating situational versus clinical depression.
Okay.
So I don't think it's dangerous to use the word depressed if that's what you're feeling. But I do think that it is important to recognize I am depressed because of this situation, or I am depressed and I don't know why.
Yeah. Okay. So if somebody has that, don't feel like they're comfortable talking, even though there might be, whether it's phrases that they might put out there or things they might do, like, what do you do? What would you recommend to somebody who's never confronted it before, but is recognizing like, this doesn't make sense, and yet I can't make it stop?
Right. I would definitely suggest trying either, if possible, finding a therapist. I would recommend therapy to anyone, honestly. I think it's a wonderful tool that we have in our medical community. And if that's sort of not an option for you, even talking it out to a picture or getting it out of your
Okay.
mind, saying
So
the words
verbally out loud. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Don't
Okay.
just sit there thinking about it, because it'll just stir and boil and sit in
There's
there.
something about the verbal.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
I know for me personally, I've recognized a lot of things better saying it out loud versus just sitting in my own head with it. And there was definitely that piece of hearing it on top of hearing it in your thoughts.
This is perfect too, because I was going to ask you if you think that there's any value in the suicide hotlines.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
It sounds like just having that, it's an anonymous to you person that you can have the out loud conversation. Even if you call one time and it's like, I'm not suicidal, but I'm not right now.
Right.
And you have a conversation and then it can be done.
Right.
Okay.
I've actually utilized the suicide hotline.
Okay.
And in case you didn't know this piece, there's actually a text hotline.
Okay.
It is 741-741.
Okay.
All you have to do is text start. And for it's, for those kinds of people who aren't in a situation where they can talk out loud.
Right.
Whether it gives them a level of anxiety or even if they're in a physical situation where you can't speak out loud what's going on, it's the same umbrella of people that run the suicide hotline, the 800-273-TALK. And it's the same thing. They'll sit and they'll talk to you, and why are you feeling this way? And what have you done before that helps you feel better? And that even being able to see the words is still very different for me personally than letting them sit in my head. Right. And being able to explain to somebody, this is why I'm feeling this way. And I know that it doesn't make sense that I'm responding this way, or maybe it does, and hearing somebody say, I'm here for you. And it's, because of the anonymity of it, there's not that underlying, oh, well, you're only saying that because you're my friend. Right.
Ugh, getting the chills just thinking about that.
Yeah.
So it's 741-741. Just say the word start.
Yep.
And the phone number one?
1-800-273-TALK.
273-TALK. If you could find your young self,
my younger self,
what would you say?
I would probably tell myself that it doesn't, having depression, being clinically depressed, doesn't make you broken. Doesn't make you any kind of outsider. It's okay, that it's who you are, and there's nothing wrong with that. It is treatable. It is manageable. One of the things that I learned more recently is that the way that my brain chemistry is, I do have to rely on medication.
Okay.
But there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Right.
It's kind of like that Ina Garten meme where she's like, if you can't get fresh churned butter from Dutch maids, store-bought is fine. That if your body doesn't produce these chemicals, store-bought is fine.
Yes.
And so, and it just understanding that this is who I am, and I need a serotonin reuptake inhibitor to be who I am on the inside, on the outside.
Right.
To be my own puppet master.
Okay, so I have a couple questions about your personal experience.
Sure.
So one is, people who don't really understand the way this feels might say, they might think of the pendulum swinging. So somebody who goes to very low lows, do you experience very high highs? What are your thoughts on the pendulum idea?
I don't personally experience this pendulum swinging. I've always, the way that I've understood, especially the way that my medicine works, that if I went from very low to a very high, it was a pretty safe indicator that I was bipolar and not just depressed. Because the way that the brain chemistry is and whatever. And so I don't generally experience these super high highs without some sort of understandable and recognizable situational trigger.
Yeah.
For example, a couple of weeks ago, I was elated because all in a matter of 48 hours, I had scheduled my tattoo, and I had scheduled, I was planning a trip to Atlanta with my best friend, and all of these wonderful things that I'm so excited about, and I was just elated about them.
Yeah. And there's a lot of positive stimulus in a short period of time.
Exactly. Yeah. And since then I'm still really excited about them, but the elation has calmed down.
And I think for me that's one of the things is I think that the pendulum idea is it's misunderstood.
Yeah.
And it's physiologically they're not always the same thing.
Right.
There can be high highs and there can be low lows, and being open and willing to feel those things. I think for myself, and I'm interested to see if you've seen this in either yourself or other people, my appearing to be super high highs when I was younger, now I'm just stupid and goofy and happy and excited, and that's just naturally who I am. Yeah. And I'm just being more of myself. But when I was younger, it was sometimes fake, and it was that I'm suppressing something else. It's I'm hiding it, I'm putting it down, I'm putting on a fake front, and it was very inauthentic.
Right.
And so for me, the pendulum thing was, if people saw that in me, what they were seeing was, oh, this is bad enough, I need to hide it from you. So I'm going to do that. So I'm not truly on a high. Right. It's that I'm overcompensating because I know that I don't want you to know my truth.
Right.
Have you personally done that, or have you seen people do that?
Oh, yeah. I've done it. But especially when I was in high school. And
that's my window.
Yeah. When I was in high school, and it was the kind of the peak of my self-harm and all of these things. But I was the happy-go-lucky girl, and nobody knew my deep, dark skeletons in my closet. And it was definitely, there were times when I was most definitely overcompensating.
Okay, so my other personal question for you,
sure.
and you may not have an answer for this. I'm just being somebody who's Christian and came to faith later in life. I am all about the Bible. I am all about Jesus. And yet I very clearly see that some of my friends call me a Paulette, because before Christianity, for me, Christians were my least favorite of all the religions. Jesus was a cool dude, but the people that run around representing him, not so much.
Yeah.
And were angry and judgmental, and stereotyping and being generic, and yet it was my personal truth, and every interaction I felt like that I had on any real level until a certain point, and then I started seeing these exceptions to the rules. But one of the things that drives me nuts, being somebody who comes straight from the Bible now and totally doesn't discount my faith and what the Bible says and what I believe about Jesus based on the people that I interact with, I go just to the source. It drives me nuts. I feel like the community of Christianity can often shame people who are having depression and anxiety. And we can pull out all of these scriptures about, like, give it to God and trust God and don't be anxious in anything. And I can give you tons of them. And they're true. And they're real. When I'm doing something like worrying about paying my bills and worrying about whether or not somebody's going to fall off their bike when they're under my care as the auntie, that's not the same as this.
Right.
And the shaming part and not hearing people and just brushing over it with platitudes, it infuriates me, because there is nothing wrong with this stuff. Have you ever had somebody throw that stuff at you? Or
yes.
What's your experience been?
Actually, my family that I grew up with is very religious. My dad's family is very Catholic, always have been. And when it kind of came to light to my family that I was depressed, I got sat down, and God's going to take care of you, and you should listen to God. And in high school, I was young, I was impressionable, and it actually created a lot of anger, because I rubbed my knees raw, kneeling and praying for help and to get out of this situation that I was in.
Right. And,
help me stop hurting myself. And I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be this person anymore. And I had darn near rubbed a hole in my carpet kneeling there praying, and I felt like I never was heard, never got help. And it actually created a lot of anger in me towards God.
Yeah.
That,
I mean,
aren't I good enough? Don't I believe hard enough to deserve to be helped?
Yeah.
And for me, it, like I said, it really created a lot of anger and a lot of disdain toward God, toward Catholics, toward even my own family, because you said that this was going to help me and it didn't.
Did anybody ever change their vibe on it? Or is it just it is what it is? And
it's kind of brushed under the rug. It's unfortunate, but it's one of those things.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is, and we don't really talk about it, and I'm okay with the fact that I was prescribed some medication, and that's what's been helping me. And I don't really talk about it with my grandparents anymore, because it'll be, oh, well, you were able to find that doctor because God put that doctor in your life to give you that medication, and I have that kind of disdain is so deep set that I'm just like, yeah, okay.
I hear that,
and it's unfortunate, but it is what it is.
Right? Absolutely. It's for me, it breaks my heart a little bit, because so just between you and I, if I didn't believe what I believe, then whatever. Right. Because I believe what I believe, I want everyone to believe it, because I don't believe it for nothing.
Right.
I believe it because I believe in eternal life and the value and the peace today and all that, and I want that for everybody. But it is definitely not a magic pill or prayer that's going to fix or heal all the time. Is God capable of miracles and healing? Yeah. Am I less of a believer or not a good enough Christian if I don't get that healing and that whatever? No. Is it easy to swallow that? Well, it's not God's will. It's not God's timing. And, some people who have accidents are paralyzed forever, and some people are able to defy the doctors and walk again. And how is that fair? And nobody said God's fair in the Bible. And so you can go in circles about it. And it's all very easy to talk about when you're not in the emotional muck of it. But there's a part of me that's always going to be very sad about that, because I believe what I believe and I want it for you. But at the same time, this is proof and it's evidence that we're not saving souls, which is what we really would all want at the heart of it, by shaming somebody with faith. Can you pray and go see a doctor? Yes. And sounds like they came around to that, but not without, not with an apology that says, like, I hope that you know that you're not unloved, unwanted, unworthy, all of the things that we all think of that are very natural. And that I still think of, even though I know it logically when we're in a not awesome headspace. We just talk about the thoughts aren't always our own, so to speak. And being able to take control of those. Or not, and owning that. Like, I'm not in control of my thoughts right now, and that needs to be okay. What am I going to do about that?
I actually kind of look on the bright side of it, because at the time that all of this was happening, I had an extremely wonderful, understanding teacher, who, the class was called Global Studies. It was kind of like a history type course, but we spent the first entire half of the year, the first whole semester, talking about global religions. We talked about Christianity, and we talked about the Crusades, and we talked about Taoism, and we talked about Buddhism, and understanding that Buddhism is not so much a religion as a lifestyle, and we talked about Hinduism and Islam, and it was one of the coolest classes I had ever experienced. And she tried, and we were kind of her guinea pig class. She wanted to try something new, so
I'm scared of what you're going to say next, but you're excited, so it's going to be good. I'm good.
So we each kind of took a global religion and researched it, and we did this project, and we taught what we understood of it to the class. But before we taught it to the class, we showed it to her, and
she's going to make sure you're not way off base.
I was very lucky enough to have the Buddhism lifestyle as part of my project, and I was able to develop an understanding of kindness and acceptance and peace and balance. And I've really ingrained that into my life. As far as, and now I don't call myself a Buddhist. I don't believe that I understand enough about the lifestyle to say outright I'm a Buddhist. The teachings and the values of Buddha, I have found to be really wonderful and something that I think a lot of people should accept.
Nice.
With the being kind to everyone and don't take more out of this life than you give, and balance between people and nature.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Very cool. Does that help with accepting people who don't accept you?
Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
Very cool. Awesome. I love you.
I love you.
I think you're amazing. Thank you. Thank you for being willing to talk.
Oh,
yeah. Anything else we should add?
It took me a while to get to this place to be able to talk about it freely and openly and unapologetically. It's a place that I feel at home with. That, yes, this was my life. Yes, these were my thoughts that weren't really mine, but that's okay. And I'm here and I can talk about them. And if me saying these things out loud helps even one person understand where they're at with their life, worth it.
Right.
Every time, all day long.
Yeah. And for me, the beauty is too, even if it somehow doesn't relate, like my story is different than your story or is different, just talking about it. Again, I'm gonna use my faith as a reference because it's my whole being.
Absolutely.
It's there can't be any skeletons in a dark closet when you're shining a light. If you've got the spotlight moving around, if you're willing to shine a light in an area of life,
right,
it doesn't have to be that you're just looking in my mirror, but just the fact that we're willing to shine a light that direction,
right,
it can't hide from us.
Exactly.
We can acknowledge and we can kind of see some piece of ourselves and be able to dig into it from there.
Exactly.
Thank you. Okay.